Tonight we're going to continue on our theme for the year, which is history in some form of matter that relates to photography, which is based on the fact that this year the club's 125 years old and it's the second oldest club in central Victoria, only than Bendigo. Can't knock them off on everything, but we've got a few times. Anyway, tonight we've got Euan McGillivray from Bendigo Historical Society, but I won't say too much more. I'll hand over to Laurie Connell, who's going to do the introduction for tonight. So Laurie, up to you.
Thank you. I was just telling you, and I hope nothing I say about him is defamatory, but I first met Euan in 1990 when I came to work for what was then called the Museum of Victoria, and worked with Euan and a bunch of other people in a really close-knit, fantastic team to build Science Works, the museum in Spotswood. So apart from the work being interesting and the creating of a new museum was being interesting, the group of people was fabulous. Very sociable bunch. So it was, most of my memories are very favourable of Euan and our colleagues, some of which I haven't seen for a while, but I catch up with Euan every once in a while. So Euan's had a long career as a curator of photography at the museum. Apart from working on the development of Science Works, he also had a major role in establishing the Immigration Museum at South Bank and or south end of the city, and the Melbourne Museum, the big shiny building next to the exhibition centre. I wasn't so involved in those, and by the time Melbourne Museum opened, I was off doing something else, being an ecologist. But what Euan's going to talk to us tonight about is a fantastic collection of photographs that the work of a prolific amateur, I think you'd say, in Bendigo. Allan Doney, is that the correct pronunciation? Yeah. So there's 13,000 negatives or something or other in the collection. Allan was prolific indeed. And after his death in 1987, the collection has kind of, had moved around a little bit into a few different places. Last year it came home under Euan's stewardship, and it's now part of the collection at the Bendigo Historical Society. So Euan's going to fill us in on a bit of the history of that collection and how magnificent it is, and probably a couple of other things along the way. Thank you.
I hope so. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks very much, Harley and Laurie, and thanks for coming out tonight. Can you hear me down the back a bit? I know I've got a very flat, dull voice, so if come forward a bit. How's that? Yes, Laurie's correct. I am going to speak about the collection that's now in the custodianship of the Bendigo Historical Society. The collection known as the Allan Doney collection. But to put that in, I started thinking about what I might say about it and how I might introduce it. And so I sort of thought back about my roles in the museum and called it a curator's perspective, because I've had to look at Allan's collection of 13,000 negatives and about 3,000 prints that he made himself, and I've found myself having quite an emotional experience looking at his collection, thinking about my own work, which we'll come to a little bit later, and also my life as a sort of a child growing up north of Bendigo and coming to Bendigo around the times when Allan was photographing. And so I found myself looking at his work and from a number of different perspectives. And so I thought I'd talk to you about that tonight. But before I do that, I'll just take you through, like the title says, photographs and public collections. So I thought I'd introduce you to some of the collections in Museum Victoria's custodianship that I was involved in bringing to the museum, and then we can situate Allan's collection, although it's not going to the museum for sure. We can situate Allan's collection in that kind of discussion. So here I go. They're not photographs, obviously, they're cameras, and part of the the senior curator's role of photography at the museum, the major part was looking after the camera collection and the collection of photographs, historical photographs and those sort of things. Photography as a technology, not as an art, not as a social form, not as social history, nothing like that. It was purely, my job was rooted in the science and technology section of the museum. And so thousands of cameras, and I've just shown you a few there. Lantern slide projectors and slides, and this little item here, in case you're wondering what it is, that's a peep show. It's about that big. Hold it up to your eye, wind those little knobs, and the pictures inside flip around, and the light comes through the alabaster frame. So I just thought I might be interested in that. Photographs by the thousands, and Laurie probably saw some of these in his time there. Daguerreotypes, tintypes, that you may be familiar with these sorts of words, ambrotypes, cabinet photographs of Dame Nellie Melba, stereographs, carte de visites, those sorts of things, thousands and thousands of them. Now, I started to, part of the role at the museum was to bring photographic collections or photographs into the museum's collection, catalogue them, make them available to the public. I'll show you 3 or 4 or 5 of these collections briefly before we get to the Allan Doney material. Big collection of material from the SEC. Someone hardly worked at the SEC. About 90,000 pictures, lantern slides, negatives, those sorts of things, and this is just a tiny sample of them. Some of them are very fascinating. That one there, I can't swear to it, but there was a training place for linesmen out in Hughesdale, the suburb of Melbourne. One of the suburbs out that way, and that pole, that's ground level. So I saw these shots like this one, I thought, oh, they're way up doing their work, but then the photographer stepped back and took a long shot, and they're only about 2 metres off the ground. It's a very strange thing to see a forest of these guys working on lines. So, SEC collection, about 90,000, between 90 and 100,000 items, catalogued, much of it digitised. You can go to Museum Victoria's collection website and start searching for SEC linesman or Latrobe Valley or brown coal, whatever, and start doing that. Another large collection, International Harvester and International Trucks. The Science and Technology collection had a very strong agricultural side to it, and trucks and harvesters and farm equipment and all those sorts of things were central to the collection that began in 1854. Up until, I suppose, I came along, I'd start to look at these items in the collection, these things, engines, harvesters, wagons that were pulled by horses. We've got warehouses full of all this big kit, industrial kit. We've got Wirraway aircraft. We've got locomotives, all sorts of things. And then started to think about how we might want to interpret those things for the public in the next 100 years. And we weren't very good at contextualising technology. We had the kit, we had the stuff, like for example the prototype black box flight recorder. We've got that sort of thing. Not much other material around it, not much paper-based material. So we set out to collect those sorts of things. That's what they called, well, what we used to call supporting material, which is a real put down, isn't it? To call Professor Warren, who worked on the black box flight recorder, his notes, sort of ancillary material. I mean, it was critical. So photographs formed that kind of genre. So we started to really focus on not only the thing itself, the object, be it a computer or a camera or a rifle or a harvester, all the other sorts of things as well. H.V. Mackay, I talked about farming instruments, heaps of farming instruments in the collection, very significant material, but not much material to do with how it was produced and how it was used and where it was used on farms and so on, that I'll come back to in a moment. There, see that face there? That's Hugh Victor Mackay himself. Up there, probably a press photo. H.V. Mackay often sent harvesters and disc ploughs and all that sort of stuff to Russia, Argentina, exported all over the world, and that might have been a picture just prior to the export of material. Stationary engines there were used in shearing sheds as an engine to pump water on farms, etc., etc. Is anyone from sort of agricultural background, farming? Does it all? Is what I'm saying? Just stop me if I'm talking rubbish, because I could be. No. Stationary engines were the lifeblood of farms right through to probably the 1940s.
I'm just wondering if that's the stump jump plough there.
This one,
Yeah.
that's a disc plough. It probably did jump over. The first stump jump ploughs were moldboard ploughs. You know, the one that cut through the soil and pushed it out like that, and then of course when it hit something, it'd jump up, slide over it, and keep going. So I think by the mechanism up here, I'd suggest that they are. When those discs hit a rock, they just flip up, keep going, and drop down. Or a stump. Particularly up in the Mallee, they'd hit stumps. That's called a stump jump plough. And the Smith brothers from South Australia were the inventors of the stump jump plough, and so that Mallee land, right through from the South Australia side, right through to northern Victoria, was a massive farming, dry land farming area. Very rich when the seasons were right, very poor when the seasons weren't. When there wasn't rain, it was useless. Vickers Ruwalt, might know Vickers Ruwalt collection. I put these pictures together because these ones are by the jobbing photographers. We don't know who they are, the photographers who came along and took these pictures. These are what Charles Ruwalt would have called catalogue shots. You know, there's his big tipper. No, I can't think of the word now. Sorry, crucible. Thank you. And he's put this guy in here for scale, obviously, and this one here. I love those shots. This one over here, it's a bit silly, isn't it? Have you ever heard of Wolfgang Sievers? You come across any of his photographs. He was a artistic, industrial, commercial photographer, quite famous in the history of Australian photography, 40s, 50s, 60s, 1940s, 50s, 60s. And I've shown this to engineer friends of mine. They say, what the hell is he doing up there? Sort of like he's tuning it somehow. But obviously it's a piece of art. And this would never have been placed here. So it's just I find that, and I hope you do too, an interesting contrast between a commercial jobbing photographer who turns up, gets paid, turns up here. Wolfgang goes to the factory and goes, wow, he's blown away by it. I know this because I actually met Wolfgang and we spoke about it. And he loved going to industrial sites and factories and those sorts of things. So that's Vickers Ruolt. Laurie Richards was a commercial photographer. Did I think it's probably a bit flat. That's a boning works in their carcasses hanging up there. The Heinz factory, a cafeteria in one of the factories, textile workers. Once again, about 85,000 shots. Really, Laurie was one of the only ones where we knew who the photographer was. Most of those other ones, we had no idea who the photographers were. We looked around as best we could for written evidence, tried to find their names. I knew one photographer through research with the SEC collection. His name was Ern Ward, and I actually found him and interviewed him when he was about 90, and that was good fun. But Laurie Richards, about 85,000 items, most of them on 5" by 4" film. Sort of, we call it large format now, but it's not really large format. One of the first places I worked in the city was a commercial industrial photography company called Ritter Jepperson, and they called 5" by 4" miniature photography. 10 by 12 plates. What they used. They wouldn't let 35mm cameras in the building. Now we're going to switch from those big collections of sort of industrial scale machinery and events and factories and those sorts of things that I've talked about. Here, we started to, I said before how we were looking at social history and life on the land, in particular because the collections were heavily orientated towards farming and agriculture, and so families working the land. These are by a photographer called Bill Boyd. I met him also when he was about 92. And keep your eye on this fellow here and the kangaroo. I was fascinated by Bill's collection about 10 or so years before. Have any of you heard about the collection of images in the United States called the Farm Security Administration? You may have heard of them called Dust Bowl photographs. The really poor people in central USA, and the government sent out photographers to document their lives, and that's when Roosevelt's New Deal came along to help rebuild, and they built dams and infrastructure and all that sort of stuff. But the farmers were dying. It was just a shocking thing. But Bill was photographing this sort of stuff with his Kodak autographic camera 10 or 15 years before anything like that. And he was a farmer. He had no idea about photography or photographers or anything like that, just his instinct. And when I saw some of these pictures, I started to, in my head, match them up to the farm security pictures, and they stack up. They stack up in particular because because they're raw. They're not done by professionals. All the farm security photographs that I talked about were done by professionals. One in particular, you've probably seen this picture, I'll bet you have, by Dorothea Lange is her name. And it's a woman on a farm with some baby, and she's got a hand like this. She's looking very forlorn. I should have put it up there. I'm sure you go, oh yes, I've seen that. But so there's Bill Boyd there and his pet kangaroo. That's his brother and his father and his mother and sister and brother. There he is there, having a bit of fun with his pet kangaroo. And some of you look about my vintage, sorry, you came up in the analogue days, you probably had a darkroom. Darkrooms. That was Bill's darkroom, there, on the back of a stripper. Not a harvester, a stripper that was called, because it just pulled off the heads of the wheat. It didn't thresh it or anything like that. That was his darkroom. His negative survived for so long because see these little black tins here? Keen's mustard powder tins. He cut up his negatives and he stored them in there. If he didn't put them in there, the mouse plagues that had from about 1919 through to 1989 when I met Bill, they would have eaten them all. So we're very lucky. We liked Bill's work so much that we turned it into a book, which was very popular, sold out, and two print runs. Fabulous story about him and his life and his conflict with his father and all sorts of things. A lovely story. So once again, contextualising those pictures and the spin-offs, the way we were able to spin off photographs and begin to tell other stories about farming families, the kids, what the kids did, Bill's relationship with his father, who was a bullocky and he didn't want to have anything to do with new technology like tractors and mechanical harvesters like Bill did. And so there's always this conflict. But I'm not here to talk about that. Don't get me sidetracked. Lily and Louisa Pitts is another one. There's about 500 items in the collection, mostly photographs, some negatives, some beautiful pictures. This one, of course, is hilarious. She was quite a person. She invented this system to learn music called music retained theory. So there's a side to her that wasn't just photography. Bill and her self-taught. Her father invented this machine called a fruit grading machine. You can see you'd pour the fruit in, wind the handle, and size, it'd sort them by size down in those bins. So I'm just showing you these things, I guess, to demonstrate the spin-off stories and the side stories and how interesting they were. This little cheeky devil here is named Frank Stevenson, and we liked Frank's story so much and Lillian's pictures that we made a little children's book out of her pictures with Frank called Mary Gum Frank, and that's that was a lovely thing to be able to do as well. We're almost done here. W.S. Anderson, William Stewart, I think, Anderson, nicknamed Toggy Anderson. He was an amateur, of course. He ran a nursery up at Gembrook, and he was passionate about photography, and so every summer he would go down to Lorne, Erskine Falls and the guest houses, and all these people would come, big groups would come on buses and charabunks and all sorts of things. They'd come down from, before the Great Ocean Road was built, they'd come down from Colac through the Otways and so on. And he took hundreds of pictures of these groups around the guest houses, and so those pictures helped a number of people write and do master's work on guest houses and the people that went to them and how they set themselves up, how they survived, and so on. And that is the beginnings of the Great Ocean Road. So we photographed all that sort of stuff. Here, you're probably wondering what this thing is in here. Does anyone know what that is? It's a camera. Panoramic camera. See the shot here? Panoramic shot. The lens, wind it up. There's clockwork there. You wind it up and then set it like it is there. See, it's pointing out that way, and then you go exposing the film at the back of the box as the lens swung around, and thereby creating this sort of picture here. Some of you may have seen, next time you see panoramic pictures in a gallery or framed up for sale somewhere, check it, and it's of people or a building, check out the left and the right. Sometimes the same thing appears on both ends of the picture. It's gone all the way around. So Toggy Anderson, prolific photographer of these sorts of things, and the fronts of guest houses called Kiora and Erskine House and all those lovely names of weatherboard buildings, and they must have had a lot of rooms in those places, that's all I can say, if they had big groups like that come down. Now, this is an interesting one. There's 6 items in this collection, and this was part of a project that I set up called The Biggest Family Album in Australia. And we set out, we had this thesis that there were extremely significant pictures, content-wise, in private hands. Professional photographers usually went where they were paid to go, like Vickers Rualt or International Trucks, and they took those sorts of pictures. Dedicated amateurs sort of spread themselves around a fair bit more. This thing, The Biggest Family Album in Australia, was an acquisition by copy program. We didn't take the pictures away. These are pictures from Jesse March, who's here. This is Jesse. We copied them and gave them back. We didn't want to acquire those pictures. They stayed in the family, which is where they should stay. But the information was gold to researchers, historians, filmmakers, students, all sorts of things. Professionals wouldn't go and take a picture like that. How else would you get a picture like that? You'd get Jesse's sister who was there with the camera. And so I'm sure we've all got these in our personal collections, but to be able to put these in a place where other people could see them and be given the message, hey, wait a minute, these are valuable. Don't just throw them on the tip or burn them. See if someone wants to keep them and have them and treasure them. But being out in the field with a binder, a reaper binder. Have you heard of that phrase before? The heads are taken off the wheat, go through the field after, the paddock after, cut the straw, and then goes through a machine like this, these things up here, beat it around, turn it into a stook. You've probably seen stooks in paddocks of straw standing up, not so much these days, they're mostly bales of hay, but I can remember seeing stooks of hay standing up, and that's a reaper binder. There's a big ball of string in there that would tie up the stook and spit it out the back, much like they spit out big rounds of hay now. Go along, bale it up, big round of hay, and then all of a sudden, plonk, out the back, the big round pops out. This was a precursor to that. So anyway, to get that lovely picture with the piece of machinery, the horses' bums, the family who brought out the morning tea to the husband, great story. She told us all those stories about how her family operated, how it ran, what it did, how much money it made when the seasons were bad, and so on. The carcass going in the meat safe here. Right, so that just, I hope that hasn't confused you about what I'm going to speak about Allan Doney, but I thought to, like I said before, to sort of situate Allan's collection of 13,000 negatives, I thought you might be interested to see how some of the other collections that I've been involved with and what the nature of those collections are. And so Allan's, that's the title from the exhibition that we've got on at the moment at the Bendigo Historical Society until August the 8th. And we've got Allan's original photographs on display. So and I'm just going back now, what I said before about how I had this sort of emotional experience on seeing a lot of Allan's pictures and his negatives and so on. I used to come down with my father when I was 10 or 12 years old from the farm up at Pyramid Hill. We'd come down to the sales with a truckload of sheep, fat lambs for the market or something like that, and I used to love coming down to Bendigo, and Dad would take me on walks around town while the sales were going on, and I went to a lot of those places where Allan photographed, and so I started to have this sort of strange experience, like I'd been there before, and all of a sudden I was in black and white days. You know, I'm walking along Pall Mall in Bendigo and the streets, and I'm looking around and thinking, I've been here before, and I had. Further to that, Allan photographed not only in central Bendigo, he took beautiful pictures in Castlemaine. I must show you one day. He photographed out in the suburbs of Bendigo, Eaglehawk and Long Gully and Californian Gully. He photographed the mine sites, the tailings, the huge dust mountains of dust after the mines had closed in 1954. All that was there. And when Dad and I would come into Bendigo, we'd go through all that stuff, and I can recall clearly being gobsmacked by seeing these mountains of shale and sand and all that, and also on a hot day, the wind blowing it around. And so I had this really sort of visceral experience of seeing Allan's pictures and plonking myself right in the frame. And quite apart from that, I started taking photographs myself only about 10 or 12, 15 years after Allan finished. And he loved to get out and about. I'm teasing you now, I'm going to show you some pictures in a minute. Allan loved to get out and about in the streets and photograph people and buildings, and I loved to do it too. And so I had this double pleasure and strange feeling. And so I've just thrown up some of my stuff, the sorts of things that I love to do, like getting out and about and seeing people and what they're doing and how they're doing it. And Allan loved the same sort of thing as well. There's Allan, about 23 years old. And come on, you're all photographers. Show me a photographer who doesn't do self-portraits. The odd self-portrait. That's him, he's very dapper. And there's very few pictures of Allan in his, 30s, 40s, 50-year-old. This one here, sorry. See him there? Taking a picture. He's probably using, he had a Rolleiflex, twin lens Rolleiflex, but I think he's using an Exacta camera where you look through the viewfinder from the top. and that's in an arcade there, the Bendigo Arcade, which is no longer there, of course, as with a lot of buildings in Bendigo. But I love that picture, and it's just sheer chance that I found it. Now, a third sort of angle I looked at when I started to look at Allan's pictures, and the thing I did a lot of study on when I was a photography student was a photographer called Henri Cartier-Bresson. Anyone, does that name mean anything to anyone there? There's a few people nodding. He coined this phrase, the decisive moment, in several books he published of his photographs under that title in probably the late 1930s, I think. And as you can see, the decisive moment, it's quite sort of literal, isn't it? And so I started to look at Allan's pictures through this, gosh, I was going to say through this lens, but no, that's too corny. From this perspective about how he would have walked around, and I've walked around a lot of Bendigo where he walked and took photos, how he would have prepared himself. Does anyone here take sort of street photography, let's call it street photography? Are you street landscapers? Allan did a lot, but he excelled in street photography. And once again, that decisive moment thing there, he's got, see the way the body's working there. This man's picking up horse poo, throwing it in the cart. The main street of Bendigo, Shamrock Hotel, backlight. He loved backlight. I'll show you some more of those in a moment. Just up the road from that previous shot. Oh, I should say, can I just go back? I should say, one of the key things about a collection like Allan's and the loveliness for me is to look at his negatives, his strips of negs, and see this picture, and then the next frame, he's around the front and he's photographing this way. So it's not backlit. I can see the man's face perfectly. I can see the buildings looking along Pall Mall the other way, back towards the fountain. Can you picture the fountain in Bendigo? Back that way. So the nature of a collection like his and being able to interrogate it frame by frame, the frame before, the frame after, and so on, it's so much joy. I love this one here a little bit. This is the former courthouse here. This woman here, just a little wave, and this one looking, crossing the street. You can say that's a lucky shot with this wave, and it put me in mind, I was speaking to someone the other day, and it put me in mind of luck. And I thought I'd sort of stretch my luck by using a sporting analogy. Anyone play golf? No one? No one plays golf? That's amazing. Ever heard of a golfer called Arnold Palmer? No, Gary Player. It's not Arnold Palmer, Gary Player. Gary Player chipped in and the ball went in the hole from 60, 70 metres away, and someone said, "Oh, that's a lucky shot, Gary." And he said, "Yeah, it was lucky," but he said, "You know, the more I practice, the luckier I get." And this is just, to me, it's the same with photography. It's being out and about, in the street, in the field, landscape photography, whatever. You may come home without taking a picture. The light's not right, the cloud formations aren't right, whatever. There's nothing happening. So you don't. But Allan, I think he was so fastidious that he waited and waited and waited. He waited, he may have had the camera up, and this person skipped down the stairs I could be fantasising here, couldn't I? Sorry, Laurie, can you see? Skipped down the stairs and the briefcase swung out, and the light catching the autumn leaves, and this character up here, just those three, and there are hundreds like this. I won't go on for too much longer. I'll leave room for questions and comments.
One thing to keep in mind, I've read a couple of places that Cartier-Bresson actually set and composed a number of his things.
Yeah.
That, you look at something like that and you go, nah, that's not composed. As
No.
in, get someone to do it. And
No, you couldn't. No.
That previous shot, I'm going, yeah, that was set up and composed.
Which one do you think?
The original,
The one waving?
Cartier-Bresson.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
Could.
that motion is replicated in the poster on the background.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you look at the dancer in the background,
Yeah. Could have been.
it's quite small,
Yeah.
but
He's a resident sceptic, is it?
this is Gary Player's luck.
Yeah. Well, does anyone remember the famous, after the Second World War, the Liberation Day kiss?
Yeah.
There was a sailor and they're embracing and they're kissing. I've seen the proof sheet of that. Not in reality, published proof sheet. And you've seen all the shots before. Oh, that's the one, and it's got a red outline. So, your point.
Yeah, well, that one's been remarked on all.
Yeah, yeah. But I think you're right too. The way I see this is there's something skipping down the stairs perhaps, and the bag's gone out. Yeah, yeah.
But on your point about the neck strip,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be fascinating if you had a strip which showed a succession of shots, where he was trying to get something interesting happening, and then that one, just amongst a whole series shot from the same setup, that would then validate the idea that it was pure luck.
Yeah. We've got
Gary Player.
there are a few examples like that. I haven't got them with me tonight, but he loved to go to the Easter Fair in Bendigo and the carousels, what called the flying horses. They'd fly around, and I was a kid, I used to love being on those, and they'd fly out, go faster and faster, and of course centrifugal force would shoot the horses out. And you're right, he has got several frames of those with the horses nowhere near out as wide, and of course they're nowhere near as dramatic. The wider the horse and the kids on the horses and the look on their face, their mouths are open, their eyes are wide. Whether he'd seen another Australian photographer called Harold Casno, has anyone ever come across him? 1915 to 1930. He did the same. He photographed carousels quite a lot with flying horses, and if you Google him, you'll see one of his famous shots of them, really out wide. And that Allan, he may have seen those sort of pictures. I don't know. I love this one here. I love a lot of them, of course. And I'll use this. And what's going on? The bike, this person coming in, this one here with the arm up, this sort of chat going on here, the light. It's a fascinating composition. This is the back of the Bendigo Post Office. If any of you have been to the loos down there, that's where they are. Just a turn of the head. I don't think that photograph would be as powerful if the man with the wheelbarrow was just straight, and another one coming up as well. But just that little turn, just that little turn that creates a bit of poetry in it. And of course the light on the wet pavement. When speaking about wet pavements, when professional photographers want to do those car shots or an ad for a car shot coming down the Great Ocean Road or on the expressways in Sydney, the first thing they order, not the photographer, not the editors, not the film editors or anything like that, it's a water cart. Bring me the water cart. And they spray the road with water. And then it's backlit, and of course it stands out like that. So next time you see a car ad, you go, water cart. Oh, here's that other one. See this woman's just that little turn there? It's lovely. If you just saw the back of her head, would it have been? But you know, this is my opinion. You obviously got different opinions. If you just saw the back of her head, it'd be nowhere near as interesting. And a friend of mine said, it's a pity she's not over that way looking into the frame rather than looking out of the frame. Sorry? Yeah. That's at the Bendigo show, of course. And he's got inside one of the stalls, not shooting from the outside, looking in where the people are walking past and looking at typewriters or refrigerators or new washing machines, because that's what...
Guys are looking at the cameraman.
This guy, here. Yeah. Eagle Hawk. Any of you been down to the Star Cinema at Eagle Hawk? Yeah. That's the town hall there and the Star Cinema. Perhaps I'm getting overwrought. Am I seeing more things here than there actually are? But no. The framing of the roof, the ceiling structure, the poles, the glossy car. I used to love...
The contrast of the glossy car and the horse and cart though is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
In a couple of eras.
Yeah. Oh, lots of pictures of cars banked up in Pall Mall, Bendigo or Williamson Street, lots of traffic, and then you look around, you see there's a guy driving a horse and cart there as well, 1954. We're not talking 1854, 1954. But yeah,
primary school,
yeah. But the composition, I think is nice. The shadow, maybe he waited until the woman was not in the shadow but in the light.
The horse in motion, it makes it.
It does, doesn't it? There's so many things that can draw your eye.
Inside out shot.
Yeah,
Like John Ford or something.
yeah. Eagle Hawk again, the little girl with the big bike, and the man struggling up the hill. Lots of people in Bendigo who are interested in buildings love Allan's photographs. That, you say, oh, do you like the little girl on the bike? And they go, where? They're fascinated by his photography of buildings. And his... see here, wrought iron, you probably, I don't know if you know this story, but in Bendigo and Melbourne and maybe Castlemaine as well, I'm not sure. There was a bylaw passed by Bendigo Council in 1968 that all posted verandas had to be taken down and replaced with cantilevered verandas, and they started to do that. And there was an uproar, of course. They're going to take the verandas off the Shamrock Hotel, right? And Allan's pictures were he took pictures of all the key buildings in Bendigo and of the special ironwork that was made in Bendigo foundries, and presented it at council, laid them all out there with the Bendigo National Trust, the Bendigo branch of the National Trust, and his photographs are credited as changing council's mind. And he, the beauty of his photographs. I love this one here, the way they're all lined up. Here, nice little line here. Yep. Once again, do you think it's do you think it's an accident or on purpose that he sneaks in just a little bit of a car there, or think he just he took the picture and it just happened to be there? I don't know. There's so many pictures that I've seen where the cars just intrude onto the scene, left or right, that it can't be an accident.
But those shadows are like lines in perspective.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Once again, his use of backlight, strong backlight and side light. Any of you analogue photographers, it's not an easy thing to do, is it? You either get the contrast is too high and too many things go into deep shadow. Keeping the detail in the shadow is quite hard. No Photoshop. Just hanging around on a Saturday morning, probably. Malden, I think. Malden? I think it's Malden. Yeah. Yeah. Does it look like Castlemaine to you? I'm not sure. What's the consensus? I've got an ulterior motive for coming here, you know. We've got these catalogued very basically, and I'll get to that soon. I'll show you how limited our catalogue is. No, I'll show you now. For example, some of those ones of Pall Mall in Bendigo of the man scooping up the horse poo, it says Bendigo Pall Mall. That's it. So we want to put all these online, which I'll tell you about in a moment, and we're wanting to have an army of people out there to go online and say, that's Castlemaine, Smythe Street, corner of whatever, and provide detail. Now, not many more. Sorry. There. I remember I mentioned that he loved going to the Easter Fair and sneaking around, taking pictures, and the thing that tells me how well dressed people got to go to the Easter Fair. We've looked up the amazing Vilster. He was a prestidigitator and fortune teller and all sorts of things. I think there's a snake lady over there, spruikers over here, lots of pictures of kids eating fairy floss and so on and so forth. But just this slab of humanity here, it's lovely. A little girl reaching up saying, "What? That's mine. What are you doing?" And these harried women, they're going, "Oh my God." It's very good. We're getting there. Shamrock Hotel, just once again, the turns of the head, the pram. He may have seen action, someone coming up the street with the pram, and maybe he ran ahead. I've done this myself. I've seen something that I think is going to happen. There's the building, and they're coming there, and I rush up there, and I wait here. No good, or yes, perfect. So sometimes you've got to get ahead of it for good street photography. And famous photographer's shop over there. Vincent Kelly was a Bendigo photographer, and Bartlett Brothers were about like Veery. Is it Veery in Castlemaine? That Veery, is that right? Yeah, similar sort of time frame. Did he have to wait for a woman to walk past in a hat? That's the question I asked myself. I don't know.
Probably all wearing hats.
Yeah, You mightn't have had to wait long, might you? Yeah. But now we were talking about frames, weren't we? In the frame, I've seen this one, many others, of course, but this one, there's several shots. Nowhere near as good as that one. One's from over here, one's from a bit closer, a bit further back, all those sorts of things. And then these, I've forgotten to tell you one thing. These are the ones, I've taken these from the negatives of the prints that Allan made himself. Sorry, I should have said that. Gosh, what an idiot. These are the ones that he has selected out of that strip we were talking about. He said, I'm going to do that one, because we've got prints of these. We haven't got prints of all of 13,000, we've got about 3,000. So I figured, I think quite rightly, that these are the prints that we've got are the ones that he's thought, this is pretty good, I'll print this one. So this is the one he's printed of the Soldiers Memorial, the RSL in Main Street, looking through to the post office clock tower, backlit, and the control of the light there and being able to get good detail.
Morning light too, and it's 10:30.
Yeah, that's, yes. Morning, that's east over there, and then in the afternoon he'd do...
Still a bit smoggy from the night before.
Yeah. All those wood fires. We're coming up to the end. Shamrock Hotel. I've stood in exactly the same spot as this, and it's a joy to stand there with his photograph and recreate this in my mind. Stilt walkers were huge during the Easter Fair, of course, very popular. Big crowds, people on the balcony loved it. There's people here. I think there's even someone in one of these windows too, I think. Just a lovely picture. I was in one of my jobs as a late teenager, I was doing a cadetship, press photographer. And you didn't get to take any pictures, you just had to carry the photographer's bag and cameras and things, and so I did that, and I'd go. That reminded me of going out on shoots with the photographer, and he'd be down here and he'd look up at that guy and go, "Oi!" and make eye contact with them. Very rude. But, and I love this here. Sorry, I'll do, see this? There it is, like the stilt walker. But his framing's lovely. There's no doubt about it. Some people said, "Oh, look at this. What do you think? Is this out of focusedness in the way to you?" No. Not to me. It makes that crowd more active. And we're getting towards the end, and I can take some questions. Now, Bendigo Historical Society online collection. This isn't one of his negatives, this is one of his prints. And as you can see up the top there, there's 37,444 as of a couple of days ago online. You can search for any of these words, just like using Trove. Any of you use Trove? Databases for State Library, New South Wales, Melbourne, whatever. Image libraries, you search for the photography, you search for Bennett's Arcade, Bendigo, 1955. Everything to do with Bendigo in 1955 will be grouped together, bang, delivered to your screen, and you can start research. So that in probably a couple of months' time, Allan's 13,000 negatives will be low-res scans, will appear just where that picture is. It'll say Allan Doney collection, and it'll say, unfortunately, like I admitted just before, Bendigo Pall Mall, Bendigo Williamson Street, Bendigo Rosalind Park, very limited. However, at least it's an entree. You can get into the collection if you're looking for something specifically. And of course, if someone wants a high resolution copy of that, we go back to the negative and do a high res scan and deliver that to them for a fee. Allan, now I'm just finishing up now. Allan was a keen entrant in photography competitions. There's many of these catalogues, Muswellbrook, Goulburn. Has anyone heard of the Australasian Photo Review, a magazine that was put out by Kodak, Baker and Rouse, who were the agency in Australia for Kodak and so on and so forth. Quite a prestigious magazine to get your photographs in. Allan, 1945, 1952, 54, and so on. He's a perennial third prizer. I'm not sure why. I don't know why I've got.
Must have been pretty good.
Hey?
Second and first must have been pretty good.
I don't even know. Well, sorry. I can look in these catalogues and find the title of the photograph that he submitted. But you know how titles. It could be called Butterfly, but it doesn't have a butterfly in the picture. If you get my drift, it's very hard sometimes to tell what the title and the picture actually was. Now, while we're on that, he was a prolific entrant in the Bendigo Camera Club as well, and he's got several awards from the Bendigo Camera Club. I think he might have a first. He's definitely got a second and a third. Now, I'm just going to hold one up. Can you see that? This is one of Allan's original pictures. He did 8.5 by 6.5, called whole plate size. They're in inches. And he did 10 by 8s, the classic 10 by 8. Now, if you can see that, can you see it's a landscape? Right? Now, the judge, have any of you been judges in competitions? Good. The judge says the haystack is a nuisance. Set fire to it. And a couple of other nasty things as well. I hope any potential judges aren't taking this as advice, because it's quite sort of cruel. This one here, oh God, I'm sorry. This is in the judge's handwriting. Too dead, too much shadow, simplify your pictures, learn print finishing, exclamation mark. So, and there's 20 or 30 like that. Different judges, because the handwriting's different. But he obviously stuck with it, because there are many pictures which the Camera Club, I'm glad you mentioned, they're having their 100th anniversary this year.
125th.
Sorry?
125th.
Right. Okay.
1901 in the Camera Club started.
Right, okay. And they want some of these pictures to, I think they're going to do a book or something. Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say now about, and the comments are important to be able to reproduce as well as to what the judging process was like. So I think that's it for me. So that's a little flyer about the exhibition. It's actually open Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays now. That's the address. If anyone wants to come up, there's about 80, 90 original pictures by Allan on display, and another 60 or 70 copies and things like that. So that was the introduction. I hope was a little bit interesting to you about some of those other collections from the museum, and about how I became much more passionate about Allan's material, and why I became very interested in sort of doing more analysis and research about his style, and that. So it got me really delving back into my past, as Laurie said, you know, being a curator at the museum for so long. So it was good. So I hope you enjoyed that, and if you've got any questions or comments, I'll be happy to hear them. Sorry.
With those backlit black and white photographs, there was quite a bit of detail, as you're saying, the shadows and the highlights, but they were fairly light. Do you know what, can you tell from the negatives what film he was using there? I'd imagine it'd be a slow film.
Yeah. You can tell from the negatives, yes, because it's got on the side.
Yeah,
he used a lot of Pan F, 50 ASA Pan F,
yeah.
And he did tend to overexpose a bit,
yeah.
and which tells me that photographers who overexpose, just a little bit of stop here or stop there, can be thought to be a little bit uncertain. So I'll give it a bit more just in case,
yeah.
you know. And so he didn't really need to do that, but with his passion for backlighting, that overexposure has really helped.
Yeah.
Help maintain that detail, because when you come to printing, you can get more out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's not chasing depth of field with the overexposure?
Well, there's not many that actually explore that depth of field sort of thing, concept much at all. As you can see from the ones that I showed you, they're all pretty much sort of, here I am, here it is, the scene.
It's not flat, and a lot of those shots are disappearing with decent focus.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
He was using an autographic, the Kodak autographic.
no, he was using Pentax cameras and a Rolleiflex. Do you know what a Rolleiflex squid?
Yeah, he shoots one.
Twin lens, yeah, I do. Well, I've got a couple myself. Twin lens Rolleiflex and Exacta. We've still got a couple of his cameras, his 35mm cameras. There's about 8,000 35mm, and the rest would be 2 1/4 square, 6 by 6 centimetre. But if you mean by depth of field, his planes are pretty straightforward. He leaves, and this is a tricky part. It's like painters leave the scene to create the depth. The person there, thing there. That sort of triangle thing creates the depth, rather than depth of field. You know, true depth of field comes into play when you come up quite close and you've got something, focus here and not there, and so on. Yeah.
Can I just confirm the W.S. Anderson collection? Is that at the Melbourne Museum?
Yes. Are you related?
No. I've got a friend who's in the historical club in Lords.
Oh yeah.
And,
I've been down there. Yeah.
so they may know of it, but I thought I'd just pass.
They'd probably know of Toggy Anderson, because this is a fascinating story. When I was at the museum, we used to take master's students, and from public history at Monash Uni, and one woman wanted to do a thing about photography, and I said, we just got this collection in, the Anderson collection, and so she said, I'll have a go at that. So 6 months later, 12 months later, she's working away, and she's interviewing family and interviewing people at Lorne, and it's a full-blown master's thesis. And she discovered, I think I said he had nursery, plant nursery at Emerald, and he used to go down to Lorne in the summer when the tourists would come, and he was having an affair in Lorne, and the researcher, the student, was terrified and sort of letting this slip to the family, but the family thought it was hysterical. So there's Toggy going down to Lorne all the time.
Okay.
Well, you know what photographers are like. Sorry, one last one.
Also fascinated with the industrial photography shots there when you said they were, I don't know how you termed it, in-house photographers or something.
Sort of jobbing photographers, yeah.
It's actually one of the first jobs I did was working for a company called British United Shoe Machinery Company in England, and in the catalogue department. So they had two professional photographers. I was just training, so they would have not got any acknowledgement whatsoever for all the photographs they took.
Yeah,
And
nothing.
all the machines and the parts.
Yeah, all those photographers, they're all anonymous now, really, unless you really go back through the company records and try and track down their pay slips or something. Yeah. There's no records whatsoever of them, and I find that's a shame.
Yeah, photographs, and they were professional photographers.
Yeah. Well, that company I used to work for, like I said, Richard Jepperson was their name. They were commercial industrial photographers, and we used to do, you're talking about catalogues, we used to do the McPherson catalogue, which was, McPherson made screws and nuts and bolts and all that sort of stuff. And so we had to photograph thousands of sizes of nuts and bolts. And you remember going into shops, they don't look it up on, like they do now, they look it up online. They'd have a catalogue on the bench, and they'd turn it over and they'd get you a bolt and they'd go, oh yeah, that's it. Yes. And so the catalogues, the printing of those photographs had to be 1-to-1, 100%. So they'd put the tool, the washer, the nut, the bolt, the screw, put it on there and say, that'll be sixpence halfpenny, thanks, or 3 and 6, or whatever. So it's a shame. Photographers like Wolfgang Sievers, that's why I put him up there, renowned for his industrial photography. He's not an industrial photographer per se.
Right.
Sorry, Harley. Yeah.
Any more questions? Did Allan sort of keep notes? Have you found any diaries, or did he write about the shots he was taking, or techniques, or?
That's a great question. I believe that Allan, because of what people have told me about him, he was a fastidious man, and I believe he would have had a notebook, and he would have had frame 1, F16, 1/60th of a second, Trentham, and the date, or Castlemaine and the date. And I reckon he would have had book after book, but when he died, I think all that stuff went.
That's in somebody's upstairs loft, maybe.
Yeah, it's just, look, I won't swear to that, but knowing and seeing, we've got boxes of his equipment, his darkroom equipment and enlarger, and much of it is in pretty good condition, so he looked after his gear. None of his negatives are bleaching out, so he's washed them, he's fixed them, and he's washed them properly, so there's all that going for it. So I'd love to think that we had access to those notebooks, but we don't.
All right, okay, well please everyone, Euan and